Yeah, welcome to my talk about experience improvements in Ceph for first-time users, or how to make beginners love Ceph. I'm Jonas. I'm working for Thomas-Krenn.AG, a German, Bavarian server manufacturer, and we deployed a lot of Ceph classes over the last 2 years. And let's see, we had about 225 nodes with 5,400 cores, 58 terabyte RAM, 1.8 petabyte NVMe, and about 900 OSDs. So, sounds like a big cluster, but it isn't, because these are like about 75 clusters, so very small. And yeah, that's what it's about today, to have beginners come into Ceph and get into Ceph as easy as possible. And they usually start with 3 nodes. So that's how we start. We start with 3 nodes. You might think, yeah, that's very little. But they are starting with that. So 3 to 5 nodes, they are very looking at costs. That means they don't even use switches for the storage. They use direct cabling to save money. And yeah, we combine it with Proxmox. That's an easy setup because they need an easy entry regarding how to access Ceph. A lot of customers I had to do with, they have the first contact with Ceph via Proxmox, and some of them even never have seen Linux CLI or shell before. So what we are doing 3 nodes with Ceph and Proxmox, and then use direct cabling with bonds, round robin, or even with Open vSwitch and rapid spinning tree. And we're getting good results with that. Like usually they start with 4 OSDs per node, and that's very little, yeah, I know. But yeah, we get good performance with NVMEs like 7 gigs per second on a Rados bench with 4 MB block size. And over the years, we deployed like 75 clusters in 2 years, or at least I did. There are a lot of lessons we have learned, and we are still learning, and our customers still do. So if the product rocks and we all love Ceph, we know why we love Ceph, because of self-healing, self-managing. I always kind of tell those people when they see a recovery, they feel like it's a Ceph magic. When you see PGs turning from red to green, and it still feels like that. But yeah, although it works very well, when you're not looking at this good, some things are really, problems will kind of appear some later if you don't know what to check at. And if then a problem appears and you don't know how to fix it, you're kind of overwhelmed very well. And that's why we are empowering them. Like, it's not that much. I only have about 2 hours per customer to get them into Ceph with Proxmox. That's not a lot of time, but there are a lot of topics we talk about there. And those topics are, in my opinion, a must-know. So what are those topics? A lot of my talk is about how can we put that into documentation so people, when they start reading docs, they don't get overwhelmed, and someone that reads about the monitor doesn't need to know all the details that are in there. They just need to know what its purpose is primarily and what all these services do. What does a manager do? What does a monitor do? What does the MDS do? So I'm only speaking today about RBD and CephFS. We usually don't use S3 or NFS Ganesha or iSCSI. We currently use it only for RBD. And they need to know what is important about that, especially why is the monitor called monitor and the manager is called manager, when it's kind of not really clear why the naming is so, and I still don't know. Usually people think, okay, so the monitor does monitoring and it's for metrics, and no, it's not, it's the manager, and yeah, it's weird. So yeah, and they also need to know what are OSDs, what it is about, what can I achieve with OSD flags, and also how can I swap disks and how can I do it properly. Means, how can I remove them? How can I add them? What does it mean when I add a disk? Yeah, there will be rebalancing, there will be PGs doing things. And yeah, how can I remove a disk even when it is not failed yet? So what do I need to do so data gets rebalanced before I unplug the disk and such things? There are a lot of things. The people that come to us, they don't know Ceph, they kind of overwhelmed because they don't know what a PG is, what a pool is, and they usually ask, oh, how can I set the pool size? And then you get into and tell them, okay, there's crush map, there's OSDs, there is crush rules, there is PGs, there is a pool, device classes, and so on, and then but yeah, that's how it is, and they are also not only overwhelmed because it is hard to understand, they are also overwhelmed because it's really sick that we have that complexity and the possibilities it offers. So I guess Joachim was it yesterday. He said you can do everything you want if you know what to do. So you kind of can make everything work with Ceph, but the question is, when one node fails or when a room fails, does everything still work? Because yeah, you can set up crush rules as you want, but are they good working, or are they really working when some host fails? You don't know if you don't try. And yeah, what can I achieve with OSD flags, especially when shutting down a host for maintenance? You don't want to rebalance all the data if you put the server online 1 hour later. Such things are really important. There are other topics as well. So I had one customer that, I don't know why, he did not monitor the OSD status, nor the blocked devices itself. So he had a bug in NVMe firmware, and he lost, as I said, we usually have about 4 to 6 OSDs per node, and he lost the OSD. The data got recreated again on other OSDs on the same node because Ceph wants to have size 3, and the data grow. He lost another NVMe, and so on and so on. What happened? One OSD reached 95% usage, and the complete cluster was not available anymore. I still don't know what to do in that case. I think about, yeah, adding more OSDs, but customer did not have any on site. So, and they don't understand. They come to Ceph with the thinking about, oh, it does the Ceph magic. It works. It's always looking for accessibility, that data is there and that is valid. And then, oh, I have one OSD and now my complete cluster is down. They don't understand. And that's why we are always telling them to check the OSD usage, the OSD count, and also always have backup OSDs in backhand so they can put in a new one if someone fails. But yeah, what I did, because customer need to come back very soon online again, and I didn't know how to fix it without extra OSDs, I just shut down the host, and then it worked again because there was no OSD with 95% usage anymore. Now the NVMe firmware bug is fixed, so he does not lose any OSDs anymore. But yeah, those are kind of things that should be top priority, in my opinion, on a Ceph guide when you come into Ceph and get into Ceph, especially when companies like Proxmox make it as easy as possible now to get people into it. They still need to know a lot about Ceph, and if the community does not enable them, it could be worse or could be bad for Ceph, in my opinion, when they have contact with Ceph and maybe get into problems they don't understand and don't know how to fix it. We also talk a lot about size and min size, and nearly every customer says, oh, why can't I put size 1 and why is this a bad idea? And then you explain it, and then he tries to, or still want to have min size 1, then you explain it again, and yeah, that's usually in every talk we have with customers. Yeah, why can't I use size 1? I have 3 replica, so why can't I lose 2 at the same time? And we also, we also tell a lot about how pools work. So yeah, you have OSDs, you have device classes, you have crush rules, crush map, and so on. I already said it. And also, what are PGs and why are there so different states and what does that mean? They come from a storage point where they have local storage nodes. Maybe they have some experience with ZFS, not that much. And the usual customer we have, they are coming from VMware and want to spend not that much money on licensing. So they say, why should I give VMware 20,000 K for licensing if I can have it with Proxmox and Ceph for free, at least if you don't want support? And that's important to see because it's another customer base than usually you have. But that doesn't mean that it's not good for Ceph to make it as easy as possible and as simple and the entry easier for them. Because, I don't know, who said it the last 1 or 2 days, we should make Ceph as easy as possible means without knowing that much details, it would be very cool to set it up without knowing things you have to, I don't know, read about to 1 to 2 months. Yeah, we also talk a lot about PGs and what's the PG autoscaler for and when it's not a good idea to use the PG autoscaler and how this rebalancing works. So it's also important when you add OSDs or remove OSDs or add another host that people know that there will be rebalancing, so they maybe should not do it in the main window of the company's working hours. And if you know how it works, then they're also overwhelmed because it's so cool what Ceph does in that thing. So I guess we all can profit if we make it easier to understand. So I heard that there will be a new beginner guide, and I really would like to contribute to it if there's some input I can give. I see, raising hands. Very good. And yeah, we have some other things as well. They don't even understand that it's an object store. So one of the first questions, how can I put a file in it? How can I have an installation media for KVM or something like that? So we also set them up CephFS. And it is also kind of important that they know how data gets written in Ceph. We only do replication setups, so I'm not sure how that works in Erasure coded. But it would be cool to have a simplified data flow, how Ceph writes means what does the monitor do, what does the client do. Then, I mean, like picking a primary OSDs knows where the secondary OSDs are and so on. And when does data get acknowledged regarding, that write is acknowledged or not. And that's a funny one, the last one. They also ask how to shut down a complete cluster if they want to put it in a different room or something like that. But it is something they really want to know. Yeah, some ideas. So I would like to see that we should start with the absolute minimum. That means for specific use cases, absolute minimum for RBD use cases, absolute minimum for S3 use cases, and so on, and focus on first-time users. A first-time user does not want to know how to compile a crush map or decompile it. They want to know what is a crush map, why do I need it, and why it is important. And use as pictures and diagrams to illustrate the topics and simplify as much as possible without telling wrong things. But it doesn't mean when you not say everything that something is wrong. You should not tell everything, but you should tell as much as possible to understand it. That doesn't mean you should tell them all about Ceph and what it does, so they don't get overwhelmed. And colleague of mine told me about I guess it was VMware interactive map they have, so you can click on each of the components and then they tell you what it does, what it is for, and why you need it. And that would be really cool to have such an entry. Means having a visual overview of Ceph in simplified way and make it interactive so people can have an easy entry into Ceph. Yeah, it would be also cool if we could provide some useful links. Where can I get the docs? Where I don't think there are any forums. I haven't found one. Then where are blogs and mailing lists, and provide also help and guidelines what people should put on mailing list on mails if they asking questions. So what logs are needed for specific cases, what command outputs are important. I mean, it's better for all if we get like mails where everything is already in there, what usually is needed for good ticket like. And I would really like to see also a showcase of typical user fails when they start with Ceph. And that doesn't mean showing bad things is kind of bad for the community. It just shows what people can make wrong. And it's good to show that because you can tell them also how to do it right and how to tackle the problems. And that is, in my opinion, the 95% OSD usage, the OSD replacement tasks, and also what Ceph services means. So that it's not a good idea to delete all monitors and then recreate them again, or delete all Ceph FFS, MDS services, and such things. Yeah, that's really important, in my opinion. And yeah, I would like to know how we can get started, so I would like to contribute as well. In that topic, I'm not a programmer, I'm kind of, consumer and also, product manager for that product in our company. And I would really like to see those 75 clusters we did over 2 years to expand and grow and to love Ceph in that way we all do. Yeah, that was... Any questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I love the story where you explained about your customers. You know, they want to drive the car. They don't care about the gears in the gearbox. Yeah. They just want to go from A to B and make that happen. So I was also interested in the typical kind of workloads your customers are using, because they start with a small setup, and then what are they addressing? What's their business they're doing? Is this like Edge or small business units or?
Yeah, it's more about small companies to like 200 users, and yeah, we not do like S3, or they only usually do RBD, make some VMs, and yeah, they only use CephFS for installation media. So
it's their shared storage for their virtualized environment.
Yeah, right.
Mail server, everything you can imagine, right? Database, all these business applications, they just run on a shared storage, which is in that case a Ceph behind Proxmox.
Yeah, I understand. And then your company delivers support to them whenever they have issues or when they are getting stuck in things.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why we only, at least until now, did HCI setups, because they also need visualization in it. And that's where the kind of easy entry is with Proxmox, because you can make everything via UI. That might sound strange to you, but there are people going to CLIs kind of no-go for some companies, even though it's not that much complicated more with Ceph ADM.
And I mean, in Germany there are 3.5 million companies in the small, medium enterprise range, and this is exactly our market, right? So 3-node setups are the usual start, and then maybe it scales up to 5, 7, 9, whatever. But that's usually the region that we are working in. And you know, the first impression for those SMEs is very important. Yeah. The first impression is, you know, bad, then they will probably never touch Ceph again, which is a pity, right? Yeah. So let's make it, you know, let's give them a good first impression, and let's make them love Ceph.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks. Sorry, there was one first.
Thanks. So on the topic of Proxmox, how do you reconcile the general recommendation for Ceph that you keep Ceph cluster and the virtualization cluster on a separate host with the Proxmox that have is like all in one box?
It's all in one box, yeah. Oh, what was the
Yeah, but
question?
how do you reconcile that? Because so far, whenever I've checked, the general recommendation for Ceph is to run on dedicated Ceph nodes. How did that work in practice?
I mean, it kind of works. You can scale up Proxmox. At least I'm not sure why. I guess it's about maybe coursing to 30 nodes or so, and that's way too much for those customers we are serving. So
Yeah,
that's they want to save money. They don't even spend money on switches. So that's the reason why they don't want to have stuff on separate hardware.
of course, but do you have any like performance penalty running the same box like for virtualization, computes, and the Ceph storage?
You can also say. It's my colleague Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. So our smallest Proxmox Ceph hyperconverged appliance actually starts with 16 cores and 128 gig RAM. So if you want it smaller, you have to talk to us because you have to know what you're doing, right? And with these 16 cores and 128 gig, there is just so much load it can take, right? So then it's kind of an estimation at first and a ballpark estimation, but you can do as much as the hardware lets you do it. But yeah, it's totally right what you're saying, right? Having both loads, hypervisor and storage on the same box, it can get whatever, like too small, too little, too tight, but you have to know what you're doing.
As I said, they don't want to have that complexity, so they want it as easy as possible, and they don't care if they put a bigger CPU in it there to get the best performance. They just don't want to have that much servers anymore, and yeah, not that much switches.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry. Stop. Okay.
Not much question, but just a couple comments.
Yeah.
First one that we see, so I work at 45 Drives, and we're a
Yeah.
vendor as well with hardware. And first thing I said with our customers that we see as well, you mentioned the UI is a big part, being able to deploy a Ceph cluster with the UI. I think that's huge. And when we built something called Ceph Deploy, I know Ceph Deploy, if anyone's been around the block, that was the original orchestration tool, but ours is just a UI wrapper around Ceph Ansible. And I've seen customers really take to that because a lot of them don't want to be in the command line.
Yeah.
And then the second part, I actually don't remember. So yeah, but anyway, that was cool that you said that. So
Yeah, what I did not say, I would really love to see Ceph having the first entry, I mean, config-wise, to be the dashboard. So you get a dashboard, the Ceph dashboard. I know you need a Ceph manager for that, but it would be cool to have starting point at UI to set up all the services like Mon Manager, OSDs, Pool,
yeah.
etc. That's, at least in my opinion and the view of our customer we have, that would be really good way to get it started. I know your YouTube channel.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, man. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. So first of all, we are running a cluster with Proxmox and Ceph hyperconverged 16 nodes without a problem. So it's
How many? No.
16
16.
SSD and HD and rotational. both.
Okay.
So we are running it. Well, this is the bigger cluster. We have other two smaller cluster 5 nodes. Of hyperconverged, so it's not a problem if you are if you know what are you running on it. If you are control which virtual machines are running, it's not a problem for the resources available. So it is on. And I have just a question about your how you sell Ceph to your customers when you are just 3 nodes. Why prefer Ceph over ZFS replication? How you sell Ceph in that case?
Fault tolerance, synchronous replication.
How do you use Ceph over multiple nodes? You mean,
ZFS
yeah, but how do you do that?
with ZFS replication.
Yeah, we do asynchronous replication. We have like small two-node clusters as well.
Ah, yeah.
Like with a third, Q device. It's called a Proxmox, and we can do asynchronously mirrored setups. But you have you have a periodic time between the two replications. So it means if one node, if something fails, you might have a data loss up to a few minutes, right? And some companies can't take that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The real-time synchronous replicated. No, what's your opinion on that?
No, I don't have an opinion. I'm just asking how you sell this stuff for companies, because you can lose 1 minute, I think, if it's remember correctly. I never used the ZFS replication, but I know that it exists. I know that it is possible, and I know the resilience is more or less the same with Ceph, without the complexity of Ceph.
They also want a UI, and that is what Proxmox does. You get one product where you can see everything.
I'm talking specifically with Proxmox.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
5-minute snapshot.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Totally right. We also sell ZFS-based setups, but usually only for two-node clusters with a third, core device. And then for 3 nodes and more as a real HA storage, we usually go for Ceph, or we have the traditional shared storage in the form of an iSCSI or fiber channel sample. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
last question.
Okay.
Yeah, so we all know getting started with Ceph is difficult. Can you talk more about day 2 operations? What are the most difficult things, scaling up or replacing disks, or what are your biggest pain points for day 2?
Yeah, understanding PGs and know what to do when PGs are not healthy. Then you need to look up manually what that statuses mean, and you usually don't know how to troubleshoot it. At least I don't. So when it does not the Ceph magic I told it, you're not really in a way to trouble fix that without reading up docs for multiple hours. Changing disks is kind of easy, at least in Proxmox. I don't know if it's the way you do it in Ceph ADM. You just destroy the old disk when it's already failed and put in a new one. But yeah, it's all things you can make wrong, because Ceph even does it well when you make it wrong. But there's always a better way to do it. You can possibly stop the OSD and then wait to rebalance and then remove the disk if it hasn't failed yet. But people kind of also, I just unblock it. I mean, it works, but it's not the way you should do it. And yeah, it's more about doing things the best way, and not because Ceph is working as good as it does to do it wrong, or kind of, yeah, it just works, so I don't care what it does, because then you will fail somehow. So thanks for the